the kids on the team because they've never played before. I got a 6-year-old who's playing and an 8-year-old who's playing, and like a lot of them, they didn't know what they didn't know before. And so we're teaching them the basics, how to pull flags, how to hold onto the ball and run at the same time, right? It is basic. And so I figured, man, they'd hook us up with some other teams that we get to play who are in the same learning level that we are. We have one practice before game one, and we play like an NFL caliber team. I kid you not. This is probably the best team in the league, and I'm pretty sure they're like part of the Patriots farm team, okay? Like age 6 to 8. They start them early these days. I don't know. But like some of these kids are throwing 20-yard passes down the field. They're running like hook and ladder plays. They're calling audibles in the huddle. They're fast. They're coordinated. They've been playing for years. My kids, they take the ball and they run backwards into their own end zone. Like, they don't know what's up, what's down. And here's one of the craziest parts about it, okay? The most maddening part for me is the huddle. If you've ever been a part of this before, you know what I'm talking about. You get all these, you get 5 kids on each side of the team. So you got 5 kids that you get in a huddle. And in that huddle, you have 30 seconds to tell every kid what their role is, what their play is. And in the middle of us trying to clarify, this is what you do, this is what you do, they're like looking off in the clouds. Like they're talking about some of them is using like their flag as like a little helicopter, One kid's like, hey, can I tell you about what I'm having for lunch today? We're like, shut up, listen to the play, right? It's nuts. And here's what we've learned, okay? We've learned that when they listen and they know how to do their job for the play, and it goes great, man, they're having fun. They love it. We got smoked game 1, okay? It was literally like 40-0. It was so bad. Game 2, they learned a little bit more. And we only got crushed 30-6. Game 3, we were this close to tying the game. Yesterday, ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited to announce, we won. Let's go. That's right. We won by 1 point. It actually came down to the very final play. I was super proud. Our kid picked the flag with like a yard to go in the end zone. I was like, let's go. I told them I'd do 25 push-ups if they won the game, and so I had to get my game on. But anyway, here's the whole point. When they're in the huddle and they're listening, the game is thriving. They're loving it. But when they don't, man, and they're distracted and they're doing their own thing, following their own plan, their own agenda, man, not only do they lose the game, but man, like their interest, their fun, like everything goes out the window. Friends, we've got an ultimate coach in the game of life. And it's up to us on whether we're going to pay attention in the huddle. And if we're in that huddle, man, and we recognize that there is one who has authority, one who knows the gameplay, and how to call the plays that are going to help us lead to a flourishing life and thrive and make a difference in this world. When we listen to that authority, we know how to follow him. Man, the game is going to be awesome. But we all have a choice. And the reality is there have been plenty of times in our life where we have failed to acknowledge that ultimate authority. We reject that wisdom, man, and things don't go exactly the way that we want. When we ignore common wisdom, when it comes to the limitations of our bodies, when it comes to following our own budgets, when it comes to having and keeping good, solid, healthy relationships around us, even ignoring like speed limits, or even just the cry of our souls, like we know the ache on the inside of us, man, when we don't listen to the author who's calling the plays. Today, as we jump into a brand new series that we're calling Encounters with Jesus, I want us to understand something about who he is. Every single week, this is what we're going to do. We're going to look at the identity of Jesus and what our adequate response is to him. And I want to look at him as the source of authority, that he's the one in the huddle that we need to start listening to. And until we start knowing the plays and his game plan for life, man, we're not going to understand how to really flourish. And that's what I believe with everything in my heart, man. He's not just calling the plays to get us in line. He wants us to flourish. He's got a source of love that he wants us to tap into, a level of experiencing life that we have not yet experienced because we need to learn how to listen. And so that's what I want to do. So if you have your Bibles, Luke chapter 7 is where we're going to be. We're going to start in verse 1. We're going to look at an amazing response that someone has to Jesus. It's so amazing, this guy's faith in Jesus, that even Jesus is amazed by all this. We're going to get into that in a second. But I want to show you what it looks like to understand who Jesus is and how to respond. And so this is the story in Luke chapter 7. It says, when Jesus had finished saying all this, he was teaching a whole lot of people, and they were listening. He entered a place called Capernaum. And there, a centurion's servant, whom the master highly valued, was sick and about to die. A centurion was a Roman military official. It was the backbone of the military army. This guy was in a chain of command and knew how to receive and take and give orders. And so this guy has a servant that he highly valued, and he's sick and about to die. The centurion heard of Jesus, verse 3, and sent some of the elders of the Jews to ask him to come and heal his servant. Now, when they came to Jesus, they pleaded earnestly with him. This man deserves to have you do this because he loves our nation and has built our synagogue. So Jesus went with them. Well, he was not far from the house when the centurion sent friends to say to him, Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. That's why I didn't even consider myself worthy to come to you. But say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes, that one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him. And turning to the crowd following him, he said, I tell you the truth, I haven't found such great faith, even in Israel. And then the men who had been sent returned to the house and found that the servant was well. Jesus is amazed at this man's faith. He's amazed. The word amazed here is actually really interesting because it's the only time that it's ever used of Jesus towards a human being. The only time in the entire Bible that he actually uses this word to say there's something about this man's faith that wowed him. There's another moment where this word is used about Jesus towards people, but it's in the opposite. It's not wowed because this guy was a great example. In the other one, he was wowed because these people had a lack of faith. But in this moment, Jesus is wowed by the centurion's faith. And so we have to ask the question, what was it about his faith that astonished Jesus? That was amazing in its quality. And that's important because I think for you and me, when it comes to understanding Jesus and responding to him, man, we want to have this kind of faith. And so what was it about this man's faith? Well, the first thing, again, is that this man understood authority. Again, as a Roman centurion, he knew something about authority. He was in the chain of command. The backbone of the military in Rome, he knew how to receive orders, he knew how to give orders, and he knew that when you followed the chain of command there, when there's a level of respect and submission to that, things flourish, it functions well. This man understood where he was in the chain of command when it came to the game of life. And he's turning to Jesus as his source of authority. Now, for us as 21st century Americans, let me tell you, this isn't easy for us. We struggle with recognizing authority and submitting to it. I mean, our entire country was based on a rebellion against the authority in the time, and it was a good reason for it, right? We needed the freedom. But I think for us, the very first thing that we need to lean into when we look at this story and understanding who Jesus is and how to respond to him is this. It's in your notes. We got to deal with our authority issues. We got to deal with our authority issues. Again, we don't like this because I think for us, our basic assumption is that personal autonomy, total freedom to choose who we are, what we believe, how we're going to live, and how we're going to do that, like that it's a basic assumption as Americans. We believe in total freedom and total autonomy, a complete independence to live however we want. And it's almost assumed that it's like, why are we even talking about this? This is just how we operate as Americans, right? A guy by the name of Alan Ehrenhart summarized this modern attitude in America this way. He said, most of us in America believe a few simple propositions that seem so clear, so self-evident, it scarcely needs to be said. Choice is a good thing in life, and the more of it we have, the happier we are. Authority is inherently suspect. Nobody should have the right to tell others what to think or how to behave. Given, right? We assume that. We say, of course this is true. We're independent. We love our freedom as Americans. Don't tell me how to live my life. Now, one side of this is freedom is an incredible gift. It's an incredible gift. And man, I love that we get to live in this country. I love that. The fact that we have the freedom to speak our minds, that we can believe what we want to believe, that we can defend ourselves that we can even raise our kids in the education system that we see best. Like, these are freedoms, personal freedoms that I think are not only good, but I think God-honoring. Like, there's amazing things about freedom, but there's a shadow side to the freedom from all constraints and any constraints. Because if we turn freedom, meaning like, I want no limitations, zero constraints on my life, I just want, like, we've got to lean into the fact that that actually isn't functional. That doesn't work. Let me prove it to you, okay? If we want the freedom to become who we want to live, or who we want to be, and to live how we want to live, sometimes that comes into conflict. Let's say that, like, I want the freedom to become an Olympic athlete. I'm free to decide that. Nobody gets to decide that for me. I want to be an Olympic athlete. And yet, I want to wake up and I want to eat donuts every day. Don't you tell me how to live. That's not compatible, right? I mean, maybe for some sports, right? Curling, I don't know. But for some of it, like, we can be free to pursue a particular direction, but that doesn't mean that every choice that we make is actually going to lead to freedom. Let me give you a window into what happened to me this week, okay? I had a total conflict when it comes to an authority in my life. We're going to call this authority the authority of portion control, okay? I had a friend that invited me out to dinner, and they were paying for dinner, and I was like, great, I'm just going to get what I want. So we went to this place that had chicken and waffles, a really special chicken and waffles. Anybody? Chicken and waffles? I'd never had chicken and waffles before because I live in New Hampshire. So I looked at the menu, and this thing had this massive chicken and waffles thing, and it was so unique. It had sriracha-infused maple syrup. It had bacon bits all over it, and this, like, honey mustard glaze over this fried chicken. And I'm like, how can I say no to that? And so I bought it. You know, I didn't buy it. I ordered it. Thank you. Anyway, we're at this thing, and I'm down in this, and it's unbelievable. And let me tell you, like, for the first third of that dinner, it was huge. It was a massive plate. First third of it, I was like, this is one of the best dinners I've ever had. But how many of you know, like, if you have, like, too much of one flavor, it starts getting a little weird? So about, like, a third of the way into this, I'm like, that's a lot of sweet. And, you know, I'm going to need to kind of fight to keep going in this. And so I did, because I'm not a quitter. Mama didn't raise no quitter, okay? So I start stealing fries from my kids and dipping them into this, like, salty thing just to break up the flavor so I have the stamina to keep going. It's like the total glutton that your pastor is right now, okay? Anyway, look, I had a hard time with portion control because I assume if I eat the whole thing, it's going to be a great experience. Not realizing I finished the whole thing, and on the way home, I'm saturated with the moans and groans of just not living into my limits. I was in a rough spot after that dinner, okay? Why did I finish it? Like, I'm not even sure where I'm going now at this point in the midst of it. Here's the point. There's authority constraints that if we don't recognize what it means to submit to those constraints and break past it and thinking, I don't care, I'm going to live however I want, sometimes it comes back to bite us. God's given us God-given constraints in this world that if we don't know how to operate under His game plan and not just have our attention so distracted that we're just living however we want to live, man, it's going to come back and it's going to hurt us. It's so important to understand there's an authority in this game of life. And we've got to know, how do we operate under His authority and not just choose to live however we want to live? Because the bottom line is, like, we've got to ask the question, not just how do we be free at all costs, but which freedom is going to actually lead to what's totally and truly liberating. Tim Keller put it this way. He says, real freedom comes from a strategic loss of some freedoms in order to gain others. It's not the absence of constraints, but it's choosing the right constraints and the right freedoms to lose. Anybody that's been in a relationship knows that this is exactly how it works. If you want to be free to get married, when you say, I do, you just bought a whole lot of constraints. Like, you can't just live however you want to live anymore, right? Hey, honey, I'm going to have a good time tonight. I'm going to go kick it with all these ladies, at a bar somewhere. No! Like, You can't do that anymore. And when you get kids, man, you got a whole bunch of more constraints. Now, you could say, man, that's the worst. Why would you limit yourself in all of that? There's more freedom when you know how to live within those constraints, because now you've got a healthy marriage and a healthy family, and what a gift. But we've got to honor the authority. We've got to honor the structure that God has given us in life to be able to thrive and flourish. For many of us, we don't recognize the authority of life, who's given us an objective set of framework within which to operate and flourish. And instead, what we've done is we've decided, I'm going to live my sex life however I want to live it. I want to use my money however I want to live it. I want to choose some relationships and not. I want to choose when and how I want to parent. And for a lot of us, man, we've found ourselves on the other side of a lot of addiction, isolation, broken relationships. And I think God's looking at us and saying, will you just trust me? Will you trust me? Will you trust me? John Stott put it this way. He said, true freedom is freedom to be my true self as God made me and meant me to be. But God made me for loving. And loving is giving and self-giving. Therefore, in order to be myself, watch this, I have to deny myself and give myself in love for God and others. This is what the centurion understood so beautifully. He comes to Jesus not full of demands or entitlements, but he comes to Jesus recognizing Jesus' authority. And man, when he operated with that kind of a framework, do you know what kind of a man he became? When the elders of the Jews came to Jesus, what did they say about him? Man, this man knows how to love. He loves our people. He loves our people. He sacrifices, not because he's made to, he's forced to, or coerced to. He loves us. He's a Roman who's loving Jewish people. He built our synagogue. He wasn't obligated to do that. But he understood how to operate within God's design, and he gave himself away. I don't know about you guys, but I want to be that kind of a man. But we've got to deal with our authority issues to get there. Now, why did he embrace this constraint of sacrificing his life, not just for the Jewish people around him, and to come to Jesus with a humble posture, but even love this servant who's on his deathbed, and he's going to bat for him? Why did he do all this? Once again, it comes down to recognizing who Jesus is and how to respond to him. And here's the second point. We've got to recognize Jesus' authority and respond with humility. We've got to recognize his authority. Jesus had authority. He has authority. And the proper response in all of this is true humility. I think oftentimes when we think about God, if we think about God during the day, we get the wrong impression about him. We don't think about him often as this one who's got ultimate authority in the universe. Far too often, if we're honest with ourselves, we think about God more as this senile, benevolent old man who's back in the garden after his glory days, who just, if we have time, he's just grateful for us to just get some time with him, sitting with him. Like he's out of touch with what's happening in the real world right now. He's harmless. He's kind of tucked away back there. He's that low-maintenance friend who never demands anything, never confronts. He always approves our life and our lifestyle. We assume that he's love, which means that his angry days in the Old Testament are behind him, and now he's just kind of benevolent. He's never judging. He always forgives because that's just what he does. And he's fine most of the time with however we want to live. And what we've done too often is we've domesticated the king of the universe. We try to tame this one that can't be tamed. The centurion approaches Jesus and he recognizes this man has authority. He calls the shots. He's sitting on the throne. And we've got to approach him that way. Man, like we don't approach him as this senile old man to just kind of cater to every once in a while. Like if you and I were to meet the King of England, I know we're not English, but like if we do that, man, there's a level of reverence and awe and respect. I use the King of England because I can't use the president. Some people are not like, anyway. We've got to approach God, the author of existence, the one on the throne of the universe, like who has no beginning, has no end, with awe and respect. But often, man, we'll go to Jesus like he's just this one who's got good advice for us. C.S. Lewis said this is exactly how we can't do it. He says, look, I'm here to prevent anyone from saying the really foolish thing that people often say about it. He said, like, I'm ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but I don't accept his claim to be God. He said, that's the one thing you can't say about God. Because a man who is merely a man and said the sort of things Jesus said wouldn't be a great moral teacher. He'd either be a lunatic on the level with the man who says he's a poached egg, or he'd be the devil of hell. He says, you've got to make your choice. You've got to make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else he's a madman or something worse. You can shut him up for a fool, you can spit at him and kill him as a demon, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. But let's not come up with any patronizing nonsense about his being a great human teacher. He's not left that open to us. He didn't intend to. Man, we come to him because he's our authority. He's our authority. Now, watch this. When we come to God, not as a sense of authority, but as someone who's just there to kind of help us get ahead in life and fulfill our agenda, we come to him with entitlements and demands, which is exactly what the first crew of people did to Jesus. Did you catch that? The centurion sent the Jewish elders to go talk to Jesus and said, hey, can you help my servant out? And he does this because he recognizes Jesus is Jewish. I don't know if you knew that. First century, Jesus was Jewish. And he recognized that the people of God, that God had specially made, were the Jewish people. And so he sends this delegation out to get help from Jesus rather than going himself. And what did these people do at first? These people come up to Jesus and say, hey, Jesus, you better heal this servant because this guy deserves it. He's been good. He's been doing this and this and this and this and this. He loves us. He deserves to have you do this. There's demand. There's entitlement. And the wild thing about this is that Jesus actually goes, but halfway along the way, what does the centurion actually do? He sends his own friends and he says, hey, this is what I want you to tell Jesus. Look, you might have heard, I deserve this. I don't. I don't deserve anything. He says, in fact, I didn't consider myself even worthy to come to you. Why does he say that? Well, he says it because he recognizes he's in the presence of authority itself. And you don't come with demands or entitlement when you counter the author of existence, who alone has the authority to do what he's asking him to do. Again, I think as Americans, man, we can come in with this demanding attitude, this entitled attitude when it comes to God. Hey, God, why aren't you going to fill in the blank? You know, I need you to X, Y, and Z. How come, God? We come with these demands. God owes me. And I think it's because we fall sometimes into this religious mindset, if we're religious at all, where it's like, well, I'm not perfect, but at least I'm better than that guy. You know, we'll point to our neighbor or a coworker and be like, God, you know I'm not that guy, so like I've been pretty good, and since I've been pretty good, why won't you give me, like there's a level of entitlement or demands to all of that, and we just assume if I've been good, God owes me something. And this is one of the amazing things about this man's faith. He knows God owes him nothing. He approaches him with utter humility. He says, God, I don't bring anything of merit to you. I can't earn this. I can't achieve this. But I'm going to you because I believe that you're able. Will you humbly receive my request on behalf of not even my life, but for my servant? And the amazing thing about all of this is that he operates within the chain of command, understanding his place in the chain of command. He's not the author of existence. Jesus is. You come to him with humility. Now, humility is not this self-deprecating, oh, woe is me, I'm the worst attitude, which a lot of people think it is. By the way, that's not humility, that's the opposite side of the pride coin, because all you think about is yourself. What humility is actually confidence rightly placed. Not confidence in yourself, but confidence in the only one who is able and has the authority to do what we need him to do. Tim Keller says, humility is not thinking less about yourself, but thinking about yourself less. You're just not in your mind anymore. Your confidence is in a different place. Humility is like the centurion going to Jesus saying, my confidence is in you, not me. I don't deserve anything. I'm not worthy, but you are. And so I'm going to boldly come to you, believing that you are able. That's what amazed Jesus. This man has a level of faith that very few people understand. My question is, do our prayers sound like this? Are we willing to come to Jesus with nothing, no merit, nothing to give him, no demands or entitlement, but to say, Jesus, I'm coming to you because I trust you. I trust you. Now, I think there's an interesting tension that we've got to develop in this, and we've got to understand how it works, because what this guy does is he comes to Jesus with a prayer that says, I need your help. And Jesus helps him. And so I think one of the tensions that we've got to finish with on this is understanding what's the relationship between our prayer life and the miraculous answers of Jesus, right? Because I don't know about you guys, but there's some circumstances I'd love for him to fix. How do we pray with this kind of faith and get some results? And so the last thing that I want to encourage you to lean in with me is this, that with this kind of faith, we can experience the results of submitting to the king's authority. We can experience results of submitting to the king's authority when we have this level of faith. Again, Jesus marveled at him, saying this guy had great faith. There was a level of great to all of this. But what is it? What is this? What is it about this great faith that got the results that this guy was looking for, okay? Look, this is really, really important. Because I think for some of us, you've been in some religious circles where you've wanted some help, you've needed some healing, you've needed something fixing in your life, and you've been told if you just had enough faith, everything would be better. If you've been in that place, let me tell you, that's a hard message to hear. Because if you don't get what you're looking for, one of two outcomes are really the reason for it. One, you didn't have enough faith. Or two, God doesn't love you enough. I want to point out something incredibly, incredibly important about this man's faith. When Jesus says he had great faith, it wasn't simply the amount of faith that Jesus marveled at. It wasn't the quantity that he marveled at as much as it was the object of his faith. This is so important, okay? Let me illustrate it this way, okay? How many of you know winter's coming? It's like the depressing moment right now, okay? Really depressing. Like I see it in my neighborhood. People are fixing their driveways. They're like resealing it, you know? They're preparing their lawns. Winter's coming. It's like, buckle up, here we go, okay? Let me just paint a winter picture for you. Let's just say for the sake of argument here, that a couple of us found ourselves in the middle of a frozen pond, and we've got to find our way out of the pond back onto dry land. And like maybe it's like early in the season or late in the season, and we're not sure which path is actually going to be stable enough for us to get there. Let's say one person looks at the path and says, man, I am confident. This is it. This is the path to get from where I'm at back to dry land. Like, follow me, guys. I'm so confident. This is it. And you got another person who's like, I'm not so sure about that. I think it actually might be this path. I'm really shaky on this. I don't know if this is the path or not, but I think this might be the way. And the person with confidence is like, nope, I'm going. And he goes, and halfway through, man, he hits a real thin sheet of ice and falls right through. Whereas the person with the shaky faith walks down that path and finds that it's solid ground, and he escapes and gets on the other side. Why do I say that? It wasn't the confidence that this guy had, the amount of faith that he had that saved him. It was the object of this man's faith that saved him, even if it was shaky. And here's just what I want you to know today. I don't care how much faith you have, and Jesus doesn't either. What he's asking is, will you trust me? Because I'm the one who's going to hold you up. Jesus even said it, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, which is the smallest of all seeds, like it's the object of your faith that matters. And here's what we're going to do. If we have confidence in Jesus, like if we truly put our faith in him, this is what we're going to do. We're going to boldly ask him for help in our time of need. We're going to come to him and ask him for that, but we're also going to submit to his plan because we believe his way is better. In James 4, it says, sometimes we don't have because we don't ask God. Sometimes God's waiting for us to just ask him, to boldly ask him, God, I need help in this situation. I'm struggling in my marriage, struggling with my finances. I don't know how to raise my kids. I need help. And Jesus is waiting for us to come to him with that level of faith that says, I trust you. I'm going to you. I'm asking you, God, help me. We don't have sometimes because we don't ask. But there's a second layer to all of this. Sometimes we don't have because we don't have the whole field of play in our vision. Sometimes we don't have because God's way is better than ours, and he alone knows what that better game plan is. And we just need to trust him. Sometimes we'll ask, and he doesn't answer those prayers because he alone knows what's best for us. And this is the level of surrender that the centurion had. Jesus, I'm going to you because I believe you're able. But I'm going to submit to your plan no matter what because I believe that you're better and you have my best in mind. The Apostle Paul knew this really well when he had a physical ailment that he called the thorn in the flesh. We don't know exactly what this was, but it was some sort of a physical ailment that he pleaded. There was 3 seasons of his life where he's pleading urgently, God, save me from this, rescue me from this. This is killing me, it's debilitating. And you know what God's answer was? Look, if there's anybody in the New Testament who had a crazy amount of faith, you better believe it was the Apostle Paul. This guy saw miracle after miracle. He saw God break out in power all over the Mediterranean world. This guy had a quantity of faith. You know what God's answer to his question was? No, I'm not going to heal you. Instead, what he said is, my grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in weakness. And you know what the Apostle Paul said? He says, this is what I'm going to do. Therefore, hearing this response from God, I'm going to boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses. Why? So that Christ's power may rest on me. That's why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses and insults and hardships and persecutions and difficulties. Because when I'm weak, then I'm strong. When we recognize that Jesus is the one in charge and he's got the whole field of play in his vision and he knows what's best for us, then when we go to him as that authority, we are going to get the results that we ask for, but sometimes it's not the results we're looking for. Sometimes it's healing the circumstances on the outside of us, and sometimes it's developing the faith and the character on the inside of us. And this is the power of this man's faith. He was willing to submit, God, I trust you. If you're going to change the things on the outside, awesome. If you just want to change the things on the inside of me, awesome. But I'm looking to you, and I trust you. If you ever heard the story of Joni Eareckson Tada, you know someone who understood suffering. Joni is someone who had a diving accident when she was a little girl. And she went diving with some of her friends. She dove in a place that was too shallow, ended up breaking her neck, and became a paraplegic for the rest of her life. Now, she had a faith in God. This woman displays an unbelievable faith in God, and God's used her in powerful ways to influence this world. Millions of people have been influenced because of Joni. And yet this woman, she'll be honest, that she's gone to so many prayer meetings. She's believed in the power of God to heal in today, right now, right here. And she's prayed and prayed and had people pray over her. God has not healed, chosen not to heal her, and yet her faith hasn't wavered. This is what she said. She said, God's more concerned with conforming me to the likeness of his son than leaving me in my comfort zones. God's more interested in the inward qualities than the outward circumstances. Things like refining my faith, humbling my heart, cleaning up my thought life, strengthening my character. She said it's heartache that forces us to embrace God out of a desperate, urgent need. God's never closer than when your heart is aching for him. Man, what's your level of faith in Jesus today? What's your prayer life look like? Do you go to him believing he's able? Do you trust him knowing that he has authority? We do this, friends, because ultimately we know that God did this for us. Man, believe me, I get it. This life is hard. The struggle is real. And when we go to God and we need things to change and we don't see it change, it is sometimes easy to lose faith. But let me tell you, Jesus went through this for us. When Jesus stepped into this world, when God sent his son into this world to do for us what we couldn't do on his own, Jesus became vulnerable. And he served us in his vulnerability, in his humility. And there was a moment where he stared down death, when he was about to die on the cross, when he stared it down, and it was so full of anxiety for him that we find him on his knees in the garden praying, God, take this away from me. I don't want this. If you can find another way, Heavenly Father, do it. In fact, in Matthew 26:39, he says, my Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, but watch this. He didn't just ask for God to find another way. He submitted to his Father's plan, knowing that his way was better. Yet not as I will, but as you will. And because he did this, in the middle of his most severe suffering, hanging on the cross, taking on your punishment and my punishment that we deserve because of our sin, as Philippians 2:8 says, that he, being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross, facing the silence of heaven, the worst of your sins and mine, heaping it on his shoulders. When he submitted to the authority of his Father, that's when you and I found our healing. That's when we were being forgiven of everything. That's when we were being made new. That's when we found reconciliation between us and God, not because of what we did, not because we earned it or deserved it, but because we were unworthy, we were undeserving, and yet his authority stepped in and did for us what we could not do on our own. Friends, could you imagine if we leaned into God with that same level of trust and faith, believing that he's able, asking him, God, heal this world, love our city, care for our neighbors, save my coworkers, but submitted into God, I believe that you're able, and I trust you with your plan. Man, the lives that would change, the faith and character that would get developed. Let's trust him with that. Will you pray with me? God, if we're honest in our darkest moments in our heart, God, we think we know what's best. We honestly, most of the time, God, we struggle to obey your authority. We break free of the constraints. We want to choose life however we want to choose it, Lord. But I'm just asking you today, would you give us faith? Would you give us faith in this room to trust you? God, I've seen you do amazing things in this life. I've seen you heal marriages. I've seen you provide for those who are destitute and don't have. Lord, I've seen you overcome illnesses and sicknesses and physical ailments. And so, God, we're not going to ask for anything short. Maybe we've got some friends in the house today who need help, and I'm asking you right now, would you step in power and help them? Lord, would you meet us in our moment of need? Maybe for some of us, God, we're here today because we've recognized over the past years, maybe even decades, we haven't been right with you. We've been choosing our own way. We haven't spent the time to develop our faith or to grow or be a part of what you're doing in this world. And today's that day to just say, God, you know what? I'm coming back to you. I want to trust you with my life. And I want to stop sitting on the sidelines. I want to do it your way. And I just want to say, God, have your way with me. Have your way in my life. Use me however you want. Would we be the kind of people, God, who trust you, who lean into this chain of command and experience the miraculous power of God? In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Friends, as we wrap up today, here's the one way I want to invite you to